Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Let me share a little bit about today's guest on the podcast. Currently, Amanda Butlett is an identity security leader at SailPoint. She's celebrating 20 plus years in cybersecurity. She has a master's degree in business and a bachelor's in computer science and criminal justice. She calls herself a Midwestern woman who is fueled by empathy and love for her amazing husband and her fur babies. Each challenge from dyslexia to career transitions has shaped her journey, and she is all about inspiring others. So I am super excited to have her on the show. I am so delighted to have with you a very special guest today on the podcast. I want to welcome to the show Amanda Butlett, who is a manager of solutions engineering at SailPoint. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to learn more about your story. As usual, I have followed you on LinkedIn and just seen some really great things that you have been doing in your career and invited you to come and share your story about your journey to the driver's seat. So, first of all, let me ask, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I think that all of us as children, when I first was young, I loved animals and I was like, I'm going to be a veterinarian. And then, obviously, I saw my dad was a police officer. And so I was like, I'm going to be a police officer. And so it's like, we shift so much when we're children because we see all these unique experiences and get those experiences and see the excitement and the joy in people's lives. And so I think for me, one of the most pivotal moments that kind of changed my whole life and set me into motion was to believe it or not, 2 weeks before my high school year, I was in a very significant car accident. I went through the windshield and I went through the side window. I was lucky to be alive. And that moment changed everything for me and changed, I knew at that moment that I needed to really take life and not take it for granted and get out there and do more and really own it. So at that moment, I was like, you know what? I wanted at that time frame, I was like, I want to go in to the FBI. And so I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to join the FBI. It's funny though, because obviously as you go through high school and college, life takes us in unexpected turns and paths. And, had somebody told me that I was going to be in like technical sales manager of cybersecurity, I would have been like, they're crazy. However, we're all in the place that we should be for a reason, and it's the people that surround us, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So I'm super happy that I've ended up where I've ended up, but down this path. And I think that's the other thing too. You can change your mind at any point. It doesn't matter what age you are. You can change your career at any point. Like if I'm going to say this, if Josh Gates on the Discovery Channel decides to leave Expedition Unknown from traveling the world and doing his archaeology work, I'm happy to take over for him.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, that is very interesting. I do change my mind. That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. I get to try a lot of different things. So when you decided you wanted to be in the FBI, how did you pivot from that to the tech space? How did that come
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, so I was went through the interview process with the FBI, and at the time frame, I was on my own and independent, and realized that at that time frame, I had my own house, and I knew that I could not afford to keep my house and do join the FBI, and I had to take a different career path. And so I started talking to, this is where it's key, network. Start to talk to people, and I started to hear other people that were like, you can do things that are related to that work in corporate. And I was like, really? And I started to learn that you could do tons of exciting work, and it didn't have to be with the FBI and or with one of the services out there. So throughout my career now, I've gotten to experience doing, devices for Air Force One, mobile devices for Air Force One. I've seen some of the top breaches or experienced some of the largest cyber hacks, and understanding those pieces of things that are happening, with state threat actors. The experience of not going to the FBI, I've still got all those pieces of value in different ways in corporate, and I love it. Wouldn't change it.
That's awesome. And you're so right, Amanda, because I think about when I was growing up, and the audience is probably like, stop talking about this, Simone, but I'm going there anyway. So I wanted to be a teacher. I told my mom, she was like, there's no money in that. Do something else. And of course, I listened and went down this completely different path. But you know what? Today, the work that I do involves teaching. So you can redesign, or that if it's something that you really want to do, it's going to resurface in a very different way, but still give you what you're looking for.
Agree, 100%.
So when you think about owning your career and being in the driver's seat, what are some of the resources that you use? You said I did some research. I found out that, I can still establish that FBI dream in different ways. Talk to us about resources that have been helpful to you in leveling up in your career.
Yeah, my husband, he he always he says I'm not afraid to go out and ask anybody. Because I think we should be able to talk to anybody. You should be able to ask anybody, And so one of the things that I would say is like my superpower is collaboration, and not being afraid. Yeah, maybe they won't respond to me if I reach out to somebody on LinkedIn. You never know. But I've had some pretty like top bigwigs, I'll ask them, how did you end up in the spot that you ended up? I love the path that you've chosen. And they'll reach out and they'll say, hey, call me. And they give me their cell number and say, call me, let's have a conversation. Or hey, let's meet up and go to dinner so I can tell you more about how this happened. So I think networking and taking chances and risks of asking people out there that you're kind of in tune with or in sync with, to say, hey, look, I would love to learn more. Um, I was just at an oil and gas conference, and the keynote speaker was this woman, and she was freaking fabulous. And her background's amazing. And I reached out to her on LinkedIn and said, I love your keynote speaking, and I hope that someday I can be just as good as you, and I would love to speak. And she said, let me know what I can do to help you.
Mm.
That's the thing. It's reaching out in your network and beyond your network. It's also about, using the resources like podcasts like this that you're doing, listening to other folks and what they're doing. We have to work together. You can't do it alone. And really read. There's tons of books out there as well too that can help you to choose the right paths, and to get those facts that you need to make the right decisions. And I am all about lists and doing pros and con lists.
I love that. I love that. I also like the from too. That's a nice tool as well. So
Yeah.
since you went there around the formula, it feels like networking and relationship building is a part of your formula for owning your career. Tell us what is your formula, Amanda, for owning your career?
Yeah, I would say my biggest one, and maybe this goes back to the fact of, like I said, 2 weeks before high school, I was in a major car accident and kind of just had that awakening. I was a very shy child before that experience. I really didn't talk to anybody, was very, I would say, sheltered. I was a very sheltered person. And after that, I knew I needed to get out there and not be afraid. And so I say, be courageous. Don't don't be afraid to take those risks. Don't be afraid to have a conversation or just say hello to somebody. You never know when you get in an elevator who you're standing next to. Be kind, be courteous, say hello. Or an Uber, talk to your Uber driver. That's usually not their full-time job. They're usually doing that on the side. What's their full-time job? You get to hear these interesting stories, learning about people, making those connections. Maybe you can help them with their career path because you know somebody, or maybe they're going to help you. I think that's the key to it. Is I'm all about the people. I think that's the biggest thing. And it's not being afraid to go out there and ask. You have to do this for yourself. You can't do it for anybody else. You can't wait. If you keep waiting, it's never going to happen.
Mm. You and I had a conversation recently, and the story you told, I would love it if you would share it on the podcast. So we talked about going backwards to go forward. And so
Yeah.
you made a decision to uh, step down from leadership, but then to come back to leadership. Can you just share what your thought process was around making pivots that work for your life and then pivoting back again? Can you talk about pivots in your career?
Yeah. There's been so many pivots in my career. It's crazy. So with that one, always know that I'm not very good at work-life balance on an that my personality is not very good at separating. I struggle with it. I still struggle with it today, even though I work for a fabulous company that really allows us that work-life balance, which I am so thankful for, especially this week. It has been an amazing week because of the company I work for. Now, I knew that my husband's father was was he was a veteran. He was affected by Agent Orange, and he had 43 tumors up and down his spine. And we needed to focus on our family and taking care of him. And it takes a village to take care of somebody who, is at end of life. And it was very emotional time for all of us. And I needed to step away from leadership because I knew I couldn't put my all in for my people that were reporting to me. And I made that choice to step away and focus on our family first and put that first. And then take that step back when I was ready. And when we knew as a family we were ready, I came back into it. But knowing yourself and knowing that you can't handle it all and you can't do it all is a good thing. So making sure that you know yourself really well and taking that step back to realize, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this right for the folks that are reporting into me, and I need to take that step back and then going back into it. And I'm so thankful to be back into it because now I feel like I can help others and get them to the careers and to the choices, or maybe it's fair work-life balance and that they're looking for that. I just had somebody reach out because they've got stuff coming up next year and they need to focus on that. And it's like, hey, you first, you are first. And I will make sure that we do everything at this company to make sure that you are successful and take care of yourself and your family.
I love that. If you were to write a book about your career body of work, what would the title be?
Oh, chaos.
Say more, say more.
Uh, you know, it's it's chaos, but it's also that determination. And, I think I look at some of the moments in my career where I've failed the biggest, and those biggest failures have been the moments where I've gained the most learning experiences and actually ended up uh, farther than farther in my career than I ever thought I would. And it's because of those moments. So for example, one of the things is when we worked at Diageo. So this is an interesting one. Um, I was given my first management experience at Diageo, and they asked me to move across the country and take that position. And I think I had 12 or 14 people reporting to me when I had never been a manager and I was in my 20s.
Wow.
I was so immature, so naive. And you also have to remember how we are raised and the experiences that we, kind of grew up with, that kind of shapes who we are in our 20s. I hadn't had the experience of the business world and how to manage folks appropriately. So, did I fail in the beginning? Yeah, I failed hard. And I'm not denying that one bit. I went back and apologized to a lot of folks because of my immaturity. I tried to reach out to many of them to say, hey, I am super sorry. I was so immature. I didn't know what I know today. And
Mm.
I think that's an important piece is going back to people and apologizing or just saying, hey, I just wanted to say hello. Times have changed. I'm a different person. I'm different than what I was in my 20s. And I think that my leadership style has changed as well and shifted. And that experience, so going from one management role to, I had one boss back then. His name was Max Gabriel, that was at Diageo, and he he helped me. So this goes into my personal life and kind of how I was raised. He and remember, my father was a police officer, so my father was suspicious of everybody. So that kind of stuck with our family. And Max would always be to me and say, remember, every person has good intentions. That sticks with me to this day. I've never forgotten what he has told me on that. And that shifted my mindset on every person that I meet in my personal life and my work life, that everybody has good intentions. So you don't know if somebody has something going on bad that day in their personal life, and that's affecting them in their work life, today. So I think having that experience and having leaders around me that could shape, that I could kind of, you, there's nothing wrong with acting or interpreting or uh, just copying what some other leader does that's a really good leader. That's a great thing to do. And so when I was in my 20s, after watching these other leaders, I started to kind of copy what they were doing. And then I shifted that into my own style and have kept, shifting my style. But I think it's an important piece to make sure that when you're younger or at any age, still to this day, is to have mentors of different types of leaders that are out there so you can learn from them and grasp from them. And they do vice versa.
Mm. Yeah, what was coming up for me when you were talking, Amanda, was that I don't know if you remember this term, but this was a term back then in our past work experience. It was search and spin, not copy. It was search and spin. Do you remember that?
Yes, yes.
Search and spin. You see what you like and then you spin it with a new
Yep.
nail. Yes, yes. So you went to the topic of mentors. I wonder what your thoughts are about sponsors because my perspective is we really need sponsors on our team in order to move up in our careers. What has been your experience with sponsors and how have they helped you to navigate your career?
Yeah, that's a great one. I like the word sponsors too. And yeah, I think that's like, you know, kind of like reaching out to the lady at the oil and gas. It's like she's willing to take on that sponsorship of, hey, what can I do for you to help you? But I think it's folks that you network with that can help you with that sponsorship of getting you to the right places as well. So um, I think that's the key piece to it is really getting to know folks out there and seeing how they can help you achieve your goals but you got to be upfront with them and tell them what you're looking for. They can't read your mind. Like, you gotta be upfront. A lot of people say this is something I haven't lost. I'm very bold. I like to just, I'm bold, I'm upfront, and I'm honest. I literally say that in my interviews too, when I'm interviewing people for roles and stuff like that, because I'm like, I'll tell you how it is. I'm not afraid to tell you how it is. So when you're looking for sponsorship of folks to kind of like, help you down that path, you've got to be upfront and honest with what your goal is, your end goal is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how do you ask for what you want? What's worked for you?
I think what's worked for me is I've shifted this completely. I used to be very bold and upfront and would just be like, hey, someday I plan to be CTO. Obviously, I don't want to be CTO anymore. I can tell you that flat out. Like, that's not my goal. That's not my goal. My goal is to help others, personally and professionally. And I love helping people. It brings me joy to see joy on the faces of others. And it's very important to make sure that the younger generations, and maybe it's because, I gave my daughter up for adoption, and I had an open adoption experience with my daughter. So I get to spend time with her. She's 25 now. She's freaking amazing. She's over in London at school. I'm so proud of her. Dream come true. Now, maybe it's because I didn't have raise a child myself that I'm so adamant about making sure that the future of children that are out there and folks that are in high school or in college have the opportunity to go down this, technical path. And especially women, I'm always focused on making sure that we give opportunities to women because we tend to be extra polite. I literally just had a women's session this morning too, where we were talking about, and I'm at fault for this too. We were talking about, having back-to-back meetings, and I'm embarrassed to tell somebody that I have to go to the bathroom because
Mm.
I'm too polite to say, hey, can you just hold on one moment so I can go to the bathroom? And it's uh it's interesting because women tend to do that. Men will be like, hey, I'm gonna be 2 seconds and I'll be right back. Women tend to hold that stuff. And we were talking about what are different ways that we can kind of shift our mindset to kind of take control of that and say, hey, I need this time. Give me 2 minutes. I'll be right back. And from a Midwest perspective, I've gotten really Midwest again.
Mm.
It's like I'm super polite. I'm like, no, you go, you go. But uh um point is that really helping others focus and see the goals that they need. And then really that's like my key thing is once again is just, I guess from like the personal standpoint of it too, is my dad passed 4 years ago, and he passed on December 19th. And it still sticks into my mind, that moment. And I still get emotional about it. But I every on that day, I go and now it's a family thing and friends thing. We go and we give thanks to the police officers that at the police station that my father worked for, and we give them pizza. To every one of the shifts, we go and we donate pizza, because it means the world to me. Because I know they have hard jobs. Everybody has a hard job. I know that. But I know that sometimes they get, the bad side of it. And I wanted to make sure that, my legacy of my father is continued through that. We also started a scholarship with a local university as well for people going into criminal justice. It matters that we make these steps forward for others.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for being so raw and honest on the show. Much appreciated. As we begin to wrap up today's episode, I'm curious, Is there any parting advice that you would like to share with others who want to take ownership of their career?
Yeah, I think once again, it goes back to I'm going to continue to say this. I think it's important to network your butt off, man. Like that is what is key. Like, don't be afraid. Take every day and reach out to somebody new to learn something new. You know, the more people that you can reach out to, the better off we all are. And so I think that's the key to it. And that takes your career and it drives your career for you in a lot of ways because you never know who you're going to run into and who you're going to meet. And so, Simone, it goes back to I said I'd love to be Josh Gates. We actually met Josh Gates this past weekend. So we got to meet him. So it was a really cool experience to meet Josh Gates. And I mean, seriously, I would take his job in a heartbeat if I followed this degree.
That's pretty awesome. All right. Well, tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you, Amanda, after the show if they'd like to do so.
Yeah, LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. See who I'm connected to. Maybe we have mutual connections. Let's talk. I think that's the best way. LinkedIn is a great resource.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for gracing us with your
Thank
time
you.
or blessing us with your time, and truly appreciate you sharing your career journey with us on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcomed.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.